A few weeks ago, I was asked to speak about the principles of inclusive finance. What I felt in the years that I've worked in climate finance are the most essential. What I've learned is what I'd share with you now. The first point for me that's really critical is the dignity of finance. I say dignity because while we focus on finance that needs to be inclusive and just, I find that dignity exemplifies what every human being has the right to: a dignified life, food, water, shelter, energy, education, but above all, the right to a thriving and prosperous livelihood. We do not have dignity as a central theme in our international climate finance architecture. This word crept up on me at COP27 when I was in the Presidential Climate Finance Task Team working on the Just Energy Transition Investment Plan. We were walking about as part of the country delegation, in and out of rooms, negotiating with funders, signing documents. At the same time, there was an entire parallel world happening outside of those rooms, where people were walking around, not knowing what's happening in those rooms, but hoping that it would be helpful for them to advance and give them back their dignity. But my discovery and it was really a culmination, to be honest, is that there's literally no dignity in international climate finance. There's no dignity in the negotiations, in the term sheets, in the access to finance, in the way in which projects are constructed and deconstructed by the funders, and the recent use of just energy transition platforms or partnerships represents to a large extent the issuance of a blank check that can't be cashed. All of these speak to elements to what we need to ask for, and for me, dignity is at the heart of it. So that would be the first principle, the dignity of finance. The second one would be looking at needs. And we've heard this word expressed before, needs-based finance. What a funder wants is risk assurance. They want coverage of their funding streams and some return. But in a climate context, the needs of funders are dominating compared to the needs of communities and countries. We have a debt-based funding system within climate action, and that is the default. Grants will make many things more helpful, but grants are very scarce, and geopolitics will make them even scarcer. Responsiveness to the needs of sites of strife, which is what we might be calling places like Lepalale or I'm recording this from Port Elizabeth. These are poor communities hoping and praying government will do something, private sector would help, bring equality, bring dignity to their livelihoods, even as climate change ravages those possibilities. But so calling these sites of strife and responding to these needs, this is not happening. The responsiveness is not there. And this applies equally to the national development banks and the national private finance systems. We need them to respond to the needs. And we don't need new institutions necessarily, but we need new institutional processes so that those needs can be responded to. And maybe the last point is about sharing and caring. A society that's sharing and caring builds up the community. But if we think about how projects are constructed, they are constructed from the perspective of the funder, as I said earlier. So there's not much risk sharing, is there? There's much noise about de-risking the private sector for climate investments. But to be honest, we need different arrangements that reflect the substance. Everyone contributed to climate change in different ways. Everyone has the duty to respond. And it is the enlightened self-interest of private sector to do so, and not seek excessive coverage for the risks which they actually can diversify. But where are we? We are in an era of entitled self-interest, whereby the narrative is not one of sharing and caring for the planet or the most vulnerable. So this needs to change. And for that to change, we need to suspend our preconceived ideas of financial architecture, of the current financial architecture and what it should be, and what private sector always does and public sector always does, and then the new entrance of philanthropy and other sources of finance. This architecture is not working for anyone. We need to co-create one that puts finance in the position of serving society, allowing it to thrive, and through sharing and building the social and economic resilience so that a just, equitable, inclusive, and dignified transition is not a myth but a reality.